Hi everybody, this is Ruth Royal from Youth Pledge for Employers, and I'm really pleased to be here today with Ola, who is director at Just Another Label. Hello, lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too.
Right, so first of all, Ola, tell us a little bit about what Just Another Label does.
Just another label. There are three parts to our business. We started off as a record company where we release music to Joe Public,
Wow.
which is called commercial music. And then we have a publishing arm to our company where we collect or we publish artists, and then that
Gosh.
collects money for performances when it's played on the TV, radio, shops, and that kind of stuff. And the third part of our business is we produce, and the main part of our business is we produce music for the media, which is called production library music, which is where it's similar to a book library where people who use music in their products, i.e. films, TV, adverts, radio, we supply music to those kind of companies as well. And that's in a nutshell what we do, yeah.
That is so fascinating because firstly, it sounds like you have the coolest job in the world, but also I don't, being like sort of untrained in that aspect, I had no idea there was sort of, it was so nuanced. I just sort of wonder, first of all, perhaps we could kind of go through each bit, talking about kind of the different skills and the different sorts of things you have to do as part of each of those jobs, starting like with the sort of the recording company aspect, first of all.
What I personally have to do, or
Or just how that whole function works.
Okay, so and how long have we got? Right, so if we start with the recording side, back in the day, before the internet, we basically used to sell records to shops and via mail order and so on, and then to individuals who were into music. And so what we do there is we produce music with various artists, and then nowadays we pass on our music to third parties to distribute to our mainly records now. And then on top of that, then we supply our music to digital services, i.e. For things like Spotify, YouTube, and those kind of areas. And
how
then
do you, oh sorry,
so
carried away. No, how do you, all right, this is a really muppet question, but how do you actually produce the music? How does that work?
So how does that work? So basically you have various studio equipment, and people get, and then you can either have a big ground studio that's worth hundreds of thousands of pounds, or you could use a laptop and or sequencer, and then you can potentially make music on there. It all depends. And yeah, it all depends on what you've got, what resources and finances you've got available to you.
And is that the part where you see people on TV kind of sliding buttons up and down, looking very technical? You know, is that where do you kind of, so somebody records a track?
Yeah, that's the more professional kind of side of things. But I say professional, I mean young people can make music in their bedrooms, and that, you know, you can get a chart with people that have got, you know, very limited equipment that have made top 10 successes, not just in the UK but also in places like America. You know, there's people making music on very limited equipment. It's all about knowing your market, knowing your audience, and getting that sound, and being I was going to say talented, but sometimes it's not about talent. It's about it's about luck and hitting the right buttons at the right time. So yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell. Yeah, and you can use various musicians and producers and so on. It is a very kind of like, it could be something you could do it on your own, or you can have a team of contributors, artists, songwriters, producers, lyricists, and so on. It all depends on how what level of the industry you're at.
Fantastic. And so for the kind of people that you sort of tend to record, what so you obviously they record a track, and then you obviously have talked about the distribution. So not only do you need to be able to kind of do the sort of the sound engineering, or sorry to be dumb if that isn't the right way to put it, but you also need to sort of have that, the capacity to go out and effectively almost sort of, is it like, do you have relationships with the organizations who distribute, or do you have to kind of pitch to them?
A bit of both. We've been doing this for over 30 years, so it's all about building the context. And if
Yeah.
nowadays it's a lot easier to get music published and out there and available for the public, but then there's so much of it. It comes down to marketing. So we use what they call a digital aggregator,
Wow.
who then distributes our music to the likes of Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so on and so forth. And then they do the work for us. But then with that, what um, the complication that comes with that is that you need to it's about data. You
Right.
need data to be able to for the search engines to be able to locate and find your music, and so on. So yeah, so and that's one way of distributing it. And then it's a question of okay, you can approach record labels. That is a little, I mean, that's you could do what they call a self-release, where an
Right.
individual would make a song or a bunch of songs or an album, whatever, and then they would then pass it on to an aggregator. There are quite a few of them out there, and they would distribute it through them digitally. Or you could approach like a physical distributor if you're doing physical products, i.e. like vinyl or CDs, and then it's then about basically they have to like the music and feel that they are able to sell it. And yeah,
Yeah, that is fascinating. That like all those kind of layers to
there's
making a
many
song.
more. Sorry
Yeah.
for interrupting, but there are many more. That is just one side of the business. There's like
Yeah.
that's the recording side of the business. So then with the publishing side,
Yeah.
which is just as complicated, or the people you can write a song and then you can pass that song on to somebody else,
Oh,
and
right.
whether that be the composition of the music or the lyrics and the melody and so on, and then you can pass it on to get that published by and performed by another artist, and then you don't have to do anything else other than sit back and hopefully collect vast amounts of money for the songs that you've produced. And then then you would approach a publisher, or you could publish yourself. And then in the UK, there's an organisation called a PRS and MCPS, and then they would monitor and kind of like collect the income for you and distribute it to, well, if you're a publisher, distribute it to your artists and yourselves.
So
Sorry, carry on.
no, I was just going to say, with the publishing arm, what's your role in that? Do you have things that you organise to sort of be published yourself, or things that you get from artists and you help them publish?
It's a combination of both of those and others, but yeah, so we would manage artists and help them mix and match them, introduce them to
Right.
other artists, and so they do collaborations and so on. And then yeah, and basically it's you don't necessarily necessarily have to get involved with the recording side, but you would have contacts with record companies and so on, and then, or the artist would, and then they would then do the promotion to get it out there physically. So the publishing is more about collecting and managing and promoting and yeah, artists to get their music out there as a writer, as a
Yeah.
composer, rather than a producer or singer.
That is just fascinating. It's so fascinating how much is about those relationships, and then obviously there's the sort of producing music, the production library aspect as well, which I guess is maybe different again.
Yes, so the production that is, yeah, it is quite different, but at the moment it's all kind of, everything's merging together, and because of the industry is, you know, evolving as it does, and it's a very fast moving industry. So
Mm.
with the production side, you make the library production side, that you music is made specifically, which is done in a different format to what you do commercially, because for instance, if you're if music is going to be played in an advert, they need to be a certain length, so
Oh,
they've got
right.
a amount of space, you know,
Of
time.
course. Yeah.
So yeah, so there may be five. I mean, YouTube now you have 5 second adverts, and then you can have 15 seconds, and then you have 30 seconds, and then you may have a minute. But then they need to be. You can't be over that time, because then obviously, you know, yeah,
Yeah.
you're not going to get your message in within that time, and then yeah. But then it needs to be that needs to be written in a specific kind of way. You don't have the long intros. You get straight to the meat. You get straight to the gravy, and basically, yeah, you should have a start, middle, and end, but to the end, you need to like almost crescendo to so subconsciously make the listener or the viewer aware that you're coming to the end of the advert or the
Yeah.
piece, and then ending the crescendo. So then at that point, perhaps you might have a logo come up or a slogan of the company or so on. And so you're drawing the attention to the audience to say, okay, we want you to see our logo, or to this is our call to action, or so on and so forth. So it's a kind of different way
Wow.
of producing and making music.
And so specific, and that is so amazing, because I have never thought about the fact that that is what happens on adverts, isn't it, with the music? Like you said, that kind of leads you to that point. I've
Yes,
I've,
yes, yeah,
I've
yeah,
never,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it happens, but I've never something that I thought of. That is fascinating, and you're
There's
thinking
still
about
a
those
hell of a
things all
lot
the
more
time.
involved in that, because you could have things like stings, like if you listen to a newsreel, you have the dun 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 or whatever, and then that is a piece of music that can generate as much or even more money than a song, because it gets played over and over and over and over again,
Wow.
and every time it's played, then that means that there's a revenue generated, unless, of course, there's always a caveat. You have sold your music, and never do this if you're a recording artist. You do a buyout deal where you get a one-off payment, and then you don't get any more money, any more revenue from it, and then it goes to whoever's purchased that buyout from you.
Oh my gosh,
And then
that's,
there's one other caveat as well, because it does.
yeah.
Well, there's many more, and then you can have within the production music world, you could have music that is like a musical bed, which sometimes may just comprise of just drums and bass, and that all sits under a narrative. So if you ever listen into the TV and you hear something subtly in the background that you can just about hear, it may even be just in your subconsciousness to help create a mood or a vibe, and it's not intrusive, so you're not distracted away from the message and the narrative, if that makes sense. So then it's so far in the background, but it's just creating a bed and an atmosphere underneath, and that could generate over time a significant amount of income. So there's music that you can generate income from that is aired or broadcasted that people don't even hear.
That's amazing.
Yeah, as an example. Yeah.
That is literally just blown my mind. That is so fascinating, that is that all those layers to music that happens as part of our world around us, and that they're all orchestrated and constructed, absolutely, is absolutely amazing. And it's
Um,
oh, sorry, go on.
so I tell me one thing to add to that. So wherever you hear music, somebody should be being paid, whether it be in a lift, on your when you're on hold in a shopping center or something like that. Sometimes it's specifically made for that purpose, and other times it's just music that's taken off the shelf, i.e. from wherever. But yeah, wherever you hear music, it should have been paid for, and someone should be generating some income. It hasn't always been like that. There has been a lot of piracy in the commercial world,
Yeah,
but people are more willing to pay for music now, or the streaming services have been a godsend to our industry, because before the streaming services, people were downloading music or listening to music for free, but the streaming services, at first it was, oh my God, no, the streaming services are an absolute nightmare. But now, over the last few years, individual and small artists, as well as the major artists, are starting to generate income from the streaming services, which is now the biggest part of the industry is generated from music being streamed, where the audience don't have to pay. Obviously, they pay for the subscriptions or so
yeah.
on, or they get a free service. But yeah, and that is paid for by the advertising or the subscriptions that the people pay. So when you with Spotify, you haven't paid for a subscription, then the adverts pay for the music.
That's just absolutely, that's so interesting about how the technology has sort of sort of been transformative in that way. First of all, potentially negatively, because people could download for free, but then for the streaming services to sort of evolve that, so the artists rights are recognised and they're actually paid for the work that they've done.
So, but even though they do get paid, I mean, each play you get micro pennies. You
Yeah,
don't necessarily get much for it, which is debatable. And you know, there are organisations. Well, artists are not. We, you know, the industry do not think that they're getting fairly paid for their music, because without their music, these companies would not be in
wouldn't
existence.
exist. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, if you look how quickly and how big Spotify, a company like Spotify is, they make an astronomical amount of money compared to the record labels, publishers, and artists, which is something that in time we all hope will be addressed.
Yeah. Oh, that's so fascinating. And it seems to me that your industry is so, like we've sort of said about these layers, but you've also, as well as this, so you've got obviously the production side of music in terms of people actually making the music, the artists, and then would you talk to us about some of the other roles? Because I don't know, do people do everything, or would you have somebody who's more like specifically like a sound engineer, and then somebody who perhaps does the, or a music production engineer, and then would you have somebody who's then kind of responsible for going out to organisations and kind of liaising with people trying to get their music out there,
A combination of both, all of those, all of the above,
Right.
all of the above. So you can have an individual who is a producer, singer, songwriter, and they've got their own, you know, console, a laptop, and then they could, you know, produce the music on their own or with a team of people different with different talents and different contribution. And then, as a group or as an individual, they can then go out and market and promote their music themselves, or they would be signed up to a record label, and then the record label would then go out there and get it marketed for them.
What about in your organisation? How does it work there? Do you do everything, or are there other aspects? Do you do
as,
everything?
I mean, initially I got into the industry because I was a music lover, and I love music, and I love you know, the whole, everything about it, and yeah, and but then as time went on, I saw that the people that I was working with, they you know, they needed someone to help and get their music out there, and because of my personality, I, you know, thought, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I could either make one song or two, you know, 3 songs a month, or I could have I can gather, you know, 30 songs and then get a percentage of all of those, and yeah, and so that's kind of like, you know, what I do nowadays is more about the managing of artists, promoting them, promoting the music, getting in the studio occasionally, A&R in, dealing with the publishers, dealing with accounts, dealing with staff. Yeah, yeah. As a director, you have to
Yeah.
manage a business, yeah, and it's yeah, it's a combination of all, yeah, all of those.
That's
What's
fascinating
more?
because that's a lot of, that's a lot of skills there. That's, that's obviously your passion for
Well, it's
music.
something that, yeah, my passion for music, it's something that evolved over many years. I've been doing this for 30 years. So yeah, and as you develop, you learn, adapt different skills and skill sets, and then yeah, you move into different areas. And obviously you have to keep up with the times, and ensure that you're fit for purpose, and your music is, or the music that you represent is getting represented and promoted in an appropriate way to generate and to represent the artist.
And you must also need to understand about kind of, I mean, maybe not to be an expert, but you've got to understand about the legalities of publishing and operating in that world, I guess.
Yeah, I did say that there's an endless list. So
You've
yes,
got to be able to have really great communication and people skills.
yes. So this is something I was going to mention to you, actually, in terms of well, no, we'll come across that. We can mention that after. It's about communication, but it's a very critical and key. Yeah, and you mentioned contracts, and the most important thing that I mention to any new artist, they have to understand contracts. To a degree. So don't just sign a piece of paper. Oh, right, this person, no, because you never know what you're signing. You have to understand it. You can go to an organisation called the Musicians Union and pay a fee, and they will check one contract for you, as many contracts you like, but only once. Yep, or you could. That's the most reasonable, cost-effective way of doing it if you're an independent artist, or you could hire a lawyer, which is well, we know how expensive lawyers can
Yeah.
be to do contracts. Or if you as seasoned as I am, you know, I've read so many contracts, it's unbelievable. But you kind of understand the terms, the genuine terms and conditions, and so that's really another skill set that I would, probably the most important parts of other than obviously producing the music is understanding the terms and conditions of whatever you're signing, whether that will be with an aggregator who's distributing your music, or record label or publisher, or whoever the agreements dictate your
Yeah.
income, the terms, your rights, and so on and so forth.
So you've got to be aware of contracts, which people might not necessarily sort of think of something straight away as that's part of what they do. Are there any other bits of the work that perhaps might not be as glamorous, perhaps, as other people think? Or
Data, as I mentioned earlier, data,
yeah,
and making sure, because if you look at if you're trying to search for music, the algorithms, and you need to be able to provide specific data for your music to be found in search engines, and that could be obviously descriptions, the BPM, the timing,
right.
the instrumentation, the vibe, the style, the tempo, the contributors, the sound alikes, and many, several others, depending. And the beauty of using an aggregator for the streaming services is that you do it once for one piece of music, but then they uh, kind of like their systems will be able to distribute them to fit into all of the other kind of
Oh,
companies they
brilliant.
distribute into. But if you were to do that yourself individually to all of those, then you'll have to adapt data according to the requirements of the search engine of the digital distributor.
Wow.
Does
Oh,
that make
yes, I
sense?
could.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I can see that makes a lot more sense to do it once through a musical aggregator,
Yeah.
because that's going to be much more efficient in terms of getting your music out there, rather than having to spend the time redoing the data for each search engine and how that might pick up.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
is there other stuff as well, like sort of other kind of, more boring bits of the job too? Is there stuff like,
Well, for young
Excel
people, I would
spreadsheets?
say for me, it's social media. It's keeping up with the what is going out there and getting your music on social media and getting the likes and so on, and the shares and so on. That can be a very daunting task, to something that you have to do regularly, and spend a lot of time. Obviously, you can employ companies to do that, but it's not. It's something that you really do need to be on the button with.
Is that, and I guess, is that different for different audiences? Do you have to use different platforms?
Yes. I mean, yeah, depend. Yeah, yes and no. Yeah, I mean, depending on the more you do, the more reach you get. So it's as simple as that. The more platforms that you're on, then you're winding the bigger audience you're going to have.
Yeah, no, that's really true. And I guess as well, the people side of things is that you've sort of built your contacts over time, and actually sort of who to go to. But somebody starting out in this industry, how do they do that?
How do they do that?
Big question. There we
Big
are.
question. There are various ways. It all depends on who you know as well.
I'm sure
Um,
that's the case with
Yeah,
this industry.
where you're situated. Always, as young people, if you're in you hang out, and networking and contacts are critical. Or always, you never know when that person you think is a bit of a nerd who's stuck in their paperwork and is really good at English and has got no creativity whatsoever. Although language is I feel we're all creative in our own
Yeah.
way. That person may be the person that may help you to sign your contract and understand the terms and conditions of your contract. So it's
So
yeah,
appreciate everybody you come across, because potentially it could be helpful.
no contact is a bad contact.
It's really helpful to understand.
So,
And is there also are there also courses or anything like that, or any kind of learning that make it easier for people to sort of get into this industry?
Uh, um, yeah, I mean, depends. It's all about networking and who you know and putting yourself out there. And social media is a really good way of doing that. Is you know, if you're social media savvy and you've got the times and the skill sets to do that. Otherwise, it's sending your music off to publishers and record companies and so on. Or, as I said before, you can approach an aggregator, and then they will, you know, obviously there will be fees involved and agreements as well. That you know there are different ways that
Yeah.
you can do so, but traditionally you would go to of course there's managers as well. Managers can get your music out, but it's all a question of taste. People have got to like what you're doing, and you've got to have an image, and you've got to show that you've got talent and resilience and all of these different qualities.
Resilience, yeah, that's, I'm sure that that is massive in terms of like the, yeah, in terms of like the personal skills for this
Yes.
industry.
Yeah, because you have to be prepared to you know, you might think, and your friends and your family, oh, this is the best record ever, blah 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 blah, and but then at the end of the day, when it goes, you know, you put it in front of a professional, or someone's going to know, well, actually, no, that is not necessarily what we're looking for, or is not
Yeah.
suitable. So that's where you do need to have that thick skin.
I bet, and especially with music, because it's so personal, isn't it? Like that,
Yes, of
you know,
course,
that
yeah.
must feel like, you know, especially the case. And what about, you know, sort of any kind of advice or thoughts on for people that perhaps aren't artists but are interested in working kind of in and around the music industry?
The music, in terms of job, there are so many different roles. It's, you know, from administration to social media, to working in a studio, to being an artist, to being a songwriter, to graphic design, to video production, to photography. All of these, you know, make up, you
Yeah.
know, the industry. That, yeah, it is a vast. There's a lot, you know, it's all about transferring the skills that you have into what is required, and getting your foot in the door, and then working your way through it from there.
What about for people who want to work in studios? What, you know, I guess it might be quite challenging to sort of get work experience, because I'm sure it's like quite competitive. But you know, there's sort of any kind of tips or anything like that for people?
Uh, I would say, depending on where you're coming from as well, in terms of in terms of work experience and internships and things like that will get you help you get on
Yeah,
the ladder. So yeah, so it's all of those. Yeah, work. I mean,
volunteering, I guess, as well.
volunteering and showing that you are part of a community, and then you've got, you know, you've got social media presence, or you've got some kind of something to offer creatively or clerically. You know, it's yeah, so it's
That's really good advice. That sense about as well, like sort of showing that you're part of a community, because you could, just from sort of just talking to you briefly today, you can see what a community this is, and being able to have that as a skill must be sort of something that you, people would want to be seeing in terms of people they'd want to recruit and work with.
yeah, people skills are definitely really important. And then as far as the industry is, yeah, education in terms of we mentioned about communication earlier.
Yeah,
Uh, the the most important subject you can have is English,
right.
because it's critical. Without communication, you know, you're not going to be able to get your message out there. So being able to
Mm.
communicate globally, we're so fortunate with our language that it
Yeah.
exports, and you know, to every territory. So having a good kind of level of English is, I would say, is critical, because you do need to communicate your message and what you're about on your music, and yeah.
So, I mean, so that's been absolutely brilliant talking to you. So, thinking about, if you're a young person thinking about getting into this industry, think about what you can do to kind of self-publicize, you know, whether or not that's something sort of online, talking to people that you might know who might be connected to somebody who might be connected to somebody else, sort of
Communication,
getting yourself out there. Yeah, and
communication
practicing
skills.
those communication skills, volunteering wherever you can to get sort of relevant work experience, things to show that you're passionate about this really complex and fascinating industry.
So when I look at a CV over the years, the qualifications are important, But then it's the layout and the creativity within the CV. If it's just, the more creative you are, the more you're going to get noticed. So when you're sending off CVs or anything, just think about the creativity. If you've got an image and if you've got social media links, put those in, and so they can see your activity and so on, and making sure that your social media is appropriate to what you're doing and so on. So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's
Thank you for showing
another
that.
important tip.
That's really helpful. I guess
No
probably
problem.
sort of just to kind of end on, really, that's just so, like, just how you managed to pack so much in. That's been brilliant. I just wondered, like, if you were to go back and give your young self a piece of careers advice, what might that be?
I would have studied and English grammar, literature, and so on, because that's very important. Because, as I say, communication is critical.
I'm so
You can have
sorry.
all the skills
You
in the
just
world.
broke up there for a second at the start of that. You were saying, would you mind just going back? That was the joy of the Norfolk internet. But so that you were saying that you read and study.
I would pay more attention to English, studying English
Yeah.
language, because as the communication it's critical, whether you're communicating about now, or you're reading a contract, or you're putting something on social media, or you're applying for a job, or you're trying to license a music. Did I mention if you're reading an agreement?
Yeah.
And yeah, so with all of these things that will help you to get up, providing the CV and blah blah blah. Having language is really, 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 really important. Other than obviously the talent.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that feels like
For
there
me,
must.
so that's why I'd have gone back to.
Yeah. Oh
So
no, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's just been absolutely brilliant to talk to you today. Thank you so much for your time.
you're welcome.